The rain hammered against the corrugated metal awning of the Greyhound station like 1,000 angry fists, each drop a reminder of everything I had lost. I pulled my grandson closer, feeling his small body shiver against mine. Marcus Jr., just 6 years old, had cried himself to sleep in my arms, his tears mixing with the November drizzle that had soaked through our thin jackets. Denver in late autumn is unforgiving. The wind cuts through you like a blade, and tonight, it felt like the whole world had turned its back on us. I am 63 years old. I have worked my entire life. I raised my children, buried my parents, and built a home with the woman I loved for 37 years. And now here I sat, homeless, on a cold metal bench at a bus station at 2 in the morning, holding my grandson like he was the only thing keeping me tethered to this earth. Because he was. 4 years, that is how long my wife Elena had been gone. 4 years since she boarded that flight to Seattle for a real estate conference and simply vanished. No wreckage, no body, no answers. The authorities eventually declared her dead, but I never stopped believing she was out there somewhere. Call me a foolish old man. I did not care. What I did not expect was that the people who would eventually destroy what remained of my life would be her own parents. My mother-in-law's words still burned in my ears, sharp as broken glass. You are nothing but a parasite, Henry, a useless old man feeding off our family. My daughter is dead because of you. Get out. Take that boy and never come back. That boy. She had called her own great-grandson that boy. For 4 years, I had devoted everything to her family. I had moved into their sprawling house in Cherry Hills Village after Elena disappeared. Partly because they asked me to, partly because I could not bear to be alone in the home Elena and I had built together. I had taken care of their property, managed their finances when they could not be bothered, and most importantly, I had raised Marcus Jr. after our daughter passed away from cancer 2 years ago, leaving the child an orphan in every sense but one. I was his grandfather, his only family, and tonight, the Harringtons had thrown us both into the street like garbage, all because Marcus Jr. had accidentally broken a crystal decanter. A stupid, expensive decanter. I looked down at my sleeping grandson. His round face, so much like his grandmother's, was peaceful now. He did not understand why his great-grandmother had screamed at us. He did not understand why we were sitting in the cold instead of his warm bed. He just knew that Grandpa was there, and that was enough for him. I had to be enough. I had no other choice. The sound of an engine broke through my spiraling thoughts. Not the rumbling diesel of a Greyhound, but something smoother, more expensive. I looked up to see a black Mercedes-AMG pulling slowly into the station, its headlights cutting through the rain like searchlights. The car stopped directly in front of our bench. My heart began to pound. Who drives a car like that to a bus station at 2 in the morning? The tinted window lowered with a soft whir, and a face I had not seen in 4 years stared back at me. Richard, Elena's younger brother. The last time I saw him was at Elena's memorial service. We had never been close. He was 15 years younger than Elena, always the black sheep of the Harrington family. He had left Colorado years ago after some falling out with his parents that no one ever explained to me. I heard he had been living in California, cutting all ties with the family. And now here he was, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, looking at me with eyes that held something I could not quite read. Pity? Urgency? Fear? Get in, he said. His voice was flat, commanding. I did not move. Richard, what are you doing here? How did you even know? I do not have time to explain. Not here. He glanced around the empty station, as if expecting someone to be watching. You need to get in this car. Now, both of you. I am not going anywhere until you tell me what is happening. Richard's jaw tightened. Fine. You want a reason? I will give you one. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Elena is alive, and I can prove it. Those 3 words hit me like a thunderbolt. The world stopped spinning. The rain, the cold, the ache in my bones, all of it vanished. All that remained were those impossible, beautiful, terrifying words. Elena is alive. I stared at him, my mouth open, unable to form words. He had to be lying. This had to be some kind of cruel joke. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw no deception, only a terrible, desperate truth. I gathered Marcus Jr. in my arms, grabbed our small bag of belongings, and got into the car. The door closed behind us, sealing us away from the cold. The heater was on, and for the first time in hours, I felt warmth. Richard said nothing as he pulled away from the station. He drove with focused intensity, checking his mirrors constantly. I watched him, my mind racing with 1,000 questions, but I knew better than to push. He would tell me when he was ready. We drove for nearly an hour, leaving Denver behind and heading into the mountains. Finally, we pulled up to a small cabin nestled among the pines, its windows dark. Richard cut the engine and sat in silence for a moment. "My son is still asleep," I said quietly. "Whatever you have to tell me, it is going to have to wait until I get him settled." Richard nodded. "There is a bedroom inside. The code is 4729. Get him to bed. Then we talk." I carried Marcus Jr. into the cabin, my legs aching from hours of sitting in the cold. The inside was modest but comfortable, a living room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen, 2 bedrooms. I laid my grandson on the bed in the smaller room, pulled a thick quilt over him, and kissed his forehead. "Grandpa loves you," I whispered. "Everything is going to be okay." I did not know if that was true, but I needed to believe it. When I returned to the living room, Richard had started a fire and was pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to me without a word. "Start talking," I said. Richard took a long drink, then set down his glass. "What I am about to tell you is going to change everything you think you know about our family, about my parents, about Elena's disappearance." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small digital recorder. This was recorded 6 months ago. I planted a listening device in my father's study when I visited for his birthday. I had my suspicions, but I needed proof. He pressed play. The voices that emerged were unmistakable: my father-in-law, Walter, and my mother-in-law, Patricia. "That idiot Henry is getting too comfortable," Patricia's voice hissed through the speaker. "He is asking questions about Elena's accounts, about the insurance money." "So what if he asks?" Walter replied. "He cannot find anything. We made sure of that. But what if he does? What if he connects it to the Portland accounts? We cannot let him ruin everything we have built. I say we find a way to push him out, frame him for something, get custody of the boy through the courts." "Patience, Patricia. The timing has to be right. Right now, having him here makes us look like the grieving, generous in-laws. When we finally move, no one will suspect a thing." The recording ended. I sat frozen, the glass of whiskey trembling in my hand. "They stole Elena's money," Richard said. "All of it. Her investment accounts, her life insurance, the proceeds from the real estate business she built from nothing. They took it all, while everyone was focused on her disappearance. And there is more." He pulled out a manila folder and placed it on the table between us. "Elena was not on that plane to Seattle. She never boarded." The words did not make sense. "What are you talking about?" The airline confirmed. The airline confirmed that a ticket in her name was used. But there is no video footage of her at the airport. No TSA records. Nothing. Richard opened the folder, revealing stacks of documents, bank statements, photographs. Someone used her identity to create a false trail. Someone who wanted everyone to think she vanished on that flight. I stared at the documents, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. "Are you saying your parents had something to do with her disappearance?" "I am saying it is worse than that." Richard's face was grim. "I am saying they did not act alone. There is someone else, someone much more dangerous." He pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table. The image showed a man in his 50s, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, shaking hands with Walter at what appeared to be a corporate event. "This is Victor Ashworth. He runs Ashworth Holdings, one of the biggest private equity firms on the West Coast. He and my father have been business partners for years. But what nobody knows is that Ashworth is also involved in money laundering, fraud, and worse. Elena found out. She was gathering evidence to expose him, and I believe that is why she disappeared." "You believe? You do not know for certain?" Richard's expression hardened. "That is where you come in. A few days before Elena vanished, she sent me something, a small package. Inside was a letter and a silver pocket watch, the one that belonged to our grandfather. I knew that watch. Elena had treasured it, kept it in a velvet box on her dresser. In her letter, she told me that if anything ever happened to her, the truth was hidden where only someone who truly loved her would think to look. She said the watch would guide me, but I never understood what she meant. I have spent 4 years trying to figure it out. Why are you only telling me this now? Richard looked away, shame flickering across his face. Because for a long time, I suspected you. My parents convinced me that you were involved, that Elena had found out something about you and you had silenced her. I believed them. He met my eyes. I was wrong, and I am sorry. I wanted to be angry. I had every right to be. But looking at Richard, at the guilt weighing on him, at the years he had clearly spent tormented by his sister's fate, I could not summon the rage. What changed your mind? 6 months ago, I overheard a phone call between my father and Ashworth. They were discussing something called the Portland situation, and how they needed to make sure the package stayed hidden. The way they talked, Richard shook his head. It was not about money or business. It was about a person. I started digging, and I found the connection to Elena's accounts. That is when I planted the recorder. He handed me the silver pocket watch. Elena left this with me for a reason. She wanted me to figure out the puzzle, but I could not. Maybe you can. I turned the watch over in my hands, feeling its familiar weight. Elena had inherited it from her grandfather, a watchmaker who had immigrated from Poland after the war. She used to joke that it was the only honest thing in the Harrington family. I opened the back cover, something I had seen Elena do 100 times. But this time, I noticed something I had never seen before, a tiny seam in the interior lining, almost invisible. With trembling fingers, I pried at the seam. It gave way, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a micro SD card. Richard leaned forward, his eyes wide. My God, it was there the whole time. We inserted the card into Richard's laptop. There was a single folder named Insurance. Inside were dozens of files, financial documents, emails, photographs, and 3 video recordings. The first video showed Victor Ashworth meeting with Walter in what appeared to be a warehouse, exchanging a briefcase full of cash. The second showed Patricia signing documents that transferred Elena's accounts to a shell company. The third was the one that stopped my heart. It showed Elena, my Elena, sitting in a small, windowless room. She looked thin and exhausted, but alive. My name is Elena Harrington Mitchell, she said, her voice hoarse. I am recording this as proof of life. The date is, she paused, checking something off screen, March 15th, 2 years ago. I have been held against my will by Victor Ashworth for approximately 2 years. If anyone is watching this, please help me. Please find me. The video ended. I sat there, tears streaming down my face, unable to breathe. She was alive. 2 years ago, she was still alive, which meant there was a chance, a desperate, fragile chance, that she still was. We have to find her, I said, my voice breaking. Richard, we have to find her right now. I know. Richard's face was set with determination. And I think I know where to start. The next few days were a blur of activity. Richard had a small network of contacts, private investigators, a former FBI agent he had befriended, a tech specialist who could trace digital footprints. While they worked, I stayed at the cabin with Marcus Jr., keeping him safe and trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for him. Every night, after he fell asleep, I would sit by the fire and study the evidence on the SD card, looking for any clue I might have missed. Elena had been meticulous. She had documented everything: Ashworth's money laundering operations, the shell companies Walter had set up, Patricia's role in liquidating her assets. But the most important piece of information was still missing. Where was she being held? On the 4th night, Richard called with news. We traced one of Ashworth's shell companies to a property in rural Oregon, near the coast, outside a town called Astoria. It is listed as a corporate retreat, but there is no record of any employees ever visiting. Satellite imagery shows a main house and several outbuildings. Heavy security. That is where she is, I said. I can feel it. Henry, I have to be honest with you. Even if she is there, Getting her out will not be easy. Ashworth has people, armed people. This is not something we can do alone. Then we do not do it alone. We go to the police, the FBI. With what? The evidence on that card is damaging, but it is not enough for a warrant. Ashworth has connections everywhere. If we go to the authorities without ironclad proof, he will be tipped off and Elena will disappear forever. We need to catch him in the act. I hated that he was right. So what do we do? Richard was quiet for a moment. There is someone who might be able to help. An old friend of Elena's from her real estate days. His name is Samuel Vance. He used to work private security before he went into consulting. He owes Elena his life. She helped him through a bad divorce, kept him from doing something stupid. If anyone can help us extract her, it is Sam. Call him. Sam Vance arrived at the cabin 2 days later. He was a big man, early 50s, with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen combat and come out the other side. He listened to our story without interruption, studied the evidence, and then looked at me with steady eyes. I will help you, he said. But you need to understand what we are walking into. This is not a rescue mission. It is a military operation. Ashworth does not play by the rules. Neither can we. I understand, I said. I do not care what it takes. I am bringing my wife home. Sam nodded. Then let us get to work. Over the next week, Sam assembled a team, 4 former military contractors he trusted with his life. We planned every detail of the operation, studied satellite images of the property, mapped entry and exit routes. Richard would stay behind with Marcus Jr. at the cabin. I had made him promise that if anything happened to me, he would raise the boy as his own. The night before the operation, I sat with my grandson by the fire. He was coloring a picture, tongue poking out in concentration, completely unaware of the danger his grandfather was about to face. Grandpa? Yes, buddy? Are you going to bring Grandma home? The question caught me off guard. We had never told him about Elena being alive. We did not want to give him false hope. But somehow, he knew. I am going to try, I said, my throat tight. I am going to try as hard as I can. He nodded solemnly, then handed me his drawing. It showed 3 figures, a big one, a small one, and a medium one with long hair holding hands under a bright yellow sun. For Grandma, he said, so she knows we miss her. I held that picture to my chest like it was made of gold. The compound in Oregon was exactly as Richard had described, a sprawling estate surrounded by dense forest, accessible only by a single private road. We approached from the water, landing on a rocky beach a mile south of the property and making our way through the trees. Sam's team moved with silent precision, neutralizing the outer guards before they could raise an alarm. I followed close behind, my heart pounding so hard I was sure the whole forest could hear it. The main house was dark except for a few lights on the ground floor. We split into 2 teams. Sam and 2 men would create a distraction at the front, while I went with the remaining 2 to search the outbuildings. The first 2 buildings were empty storage sheds filled with equipment. But the third, a converted barn set back from the main property, was different. Heavy locks on the doors, bars on the windows. My hands were shaking as we cut through the locks. The door swung open to reveal a narrow hallway lined with small rooms. Prison cells, I realized with horror. Ashworth was not just holding Elena here. He was running some kind of detention facility. Most of the cells were empty, but at the end of the hall, behind a reinforced steel door, we found her. Elena. She was lying on a thin mattress, her hair gray and matted, her face lined with suffering I could not imagine. But when she looked up and saw me standing in the doorway, her eyes, those beautiful brown eyes I had fallen in love with 40 years ago, filled with tears. Henry? Her voice was barely a whisper. Is it really you? It is me, sweetheart. I rushed to her side, falling to my knees, taking her frail hands in mine. I am here. I found you. I am taking you home, she sobbed, clutching my hands like she would never let go. I knew you would come. I never stopped believing. Even when they told me everyone thought I was dead, I knew you would not give up on me. Never, I said, tears streaming down my face. Never in a million years. An explosion sounded from somewhere outside Sam's distraction. We did not have much time. Can you walk? I asked. I think so. They have not let me move much, but I will crawl if I have to. I helped her to her feet, draping her arm over my shoulder. She was so thin, so weak. The rage I felt toward Ashworth and the Harringtons burned like molten iron in my chest. We made it out of the building just as all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from the main house. Sam's voice crackled over the radio. We've got company. Multiple hostiles. Get to the extraction point now. I half carried Elena through the forest, my lungs burning, my legs screaming. Behind us, I could hear shouting, the crack of weapons. But I did not stop. I could not stop. We reached the beach just as our boat was pulling up. Sam and his team were right behind us, laying down covering fire. We scrambled aboard, and within seconds, we were racing away across the dark water. Elena collapsed against me, sobbing with relief. I held her tight, feeling her heartbeat against my chest, the most beautiful rhythm I had ever known. It is over, I whispered into her hair. It is finally over. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Victor Ashworth and the Harringtons, not for us. The evidence on Elena's SD card, combined with the footage from the rescue and testimony from Elena herself, was more than enough to bring the whole conspiracy crashing down. Federal agents arrested Ashworth at his Seattle home 3 days later. Walter and Patricia were taken into custody in Denver, charged with fraud, conspiracy, and kidnapping. The trial made national news. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Ashworth received life without parole. Walter got 25 years. Patricia got 18. I attended every day of the trial, sitting in the front row where they could see me. I wanted them to know that the man they had tried to destroy was still standing. And I wanted them to see Elena, alive and recovering, proof that their evil had failed. Richard became a regular presence in our lives. The brother-in-law I had barely known became one of my closest friends. He and Elena spent hours together, rebuilding the relationship their parents had tried to poison. He was the one who walked her down the aisle when we renewed our vows on our 40th anniversary. And Marcus Jr., our beautiful grandson, got to know the grandmother he had been told was gone forever. Watching Elena hold him for the first time, seeing them play together in the garden of the new home we built outside Denver, filled my heart with a joy I had thought I would never feel again. One evening, about a year after the rescue, Elena and I sat on our porch, watching the sunset paint the Rocky Mountains in shades of gold and purple. Marcus Jr. was inside, working on a puzzle with Richard. "Do you ever wonder why they did it?" Elena asked quietly. "My parents, I mean. We were a family. How could they choose money over their own daughter?" I thought about it for a long moment. I think some people get so twisted by greed that they lose sight of what matters. They convince themselves that money was everything, and once they started down that path, there was no turning back. Elena nodded slowly. I almost lost myself in that place. There were days I wanted to give up, to just let go. But every time I felt myself slipping, I would think about you, about Marcus Jr. I would tell myself that somewhere out there, you were still fighting for me. She took my hand. "And you were. Always," I said. "I will always fight for you." She leaned her head against my shoulder, and we watched the last light fade from the sky together. I am 64 years old now. I have seen the worst that humanity has to offer: betrayal, greed, cruelty that defies understanding. But I have also seen the best: love that survives the impossible, family that chooses loyalty over blood, courage that rises from the depths of despair. If you are listening to this story and you are going through something hard, something that feels hopeless, I want you to know one thing. Do not give up. The darkness is real, but so is the light on the other side. Sometimes you have to walk through hell to find your way home. And when you finally get there, holding the people you love, breathing the free air, feeling the sun on your face, trust me when I tell you, it is worth every step of the journey. I am Henry Mitchell. This is my story, and I am grateful every single day that I live to tell it. Now I am curious, where are you listening from tonight? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if this story touched your heart, consider subscribing to the Hallowed Vengeance channel. Every story we share comes from real people who found their strength when everything seemed lost. If you enjoyed this story, you will love what we have coming next. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now. I promise you will not be disappointed. Until next time, take care of yourselves and hold your loved ones close. You never know how precious that time really is.